Hi, everyone, and a very warm welcome to this pre conference LinkedIn Live exclusively curated for the People Matters EX APAC 2021. I'm Esther Martinez, I'm the CEO and editor in chief at People Matters, and I wonder where are all you joining us from today. So it'll be lovely because this session is live, it'll be lovely to get to know each other. So, inviting you to on the chat, just let us know which countries are you joining us this morning, this afternoon, this evening, depending where you're joining us from. And please use the comments section to say hello, to say your name, and to tell us which city, which country you're joining us from. And I'll keep inviting as I see those comments coming along. Thank you so much. So with this disruption that has emerged, of course, in the last 18 months has put a lot of pressure on the way we look at employee experience. And I think that was core even pre-pandemic, but I think with the pandemic, we have realized that there is a need for us to redefine and adapt what employee experience is in the context of the post-pandemic world. What we're going to be doing today is we're going to be talking about the definition of employee experience and what are some of those defining parameters. We're also going to talk about how do we reboot the employee experience, how we do redesign that employee experience. And finally, we're also going to be talking about how do we hear and how do we act on what we hear from our employees. And that's really core to closing the loop when it comes to employee experience design. So to start this conversation, I'm going to welcome our panelists for this live session, and I'm going to invite them to join the stage one by one. So welcoming Graham Allman, EVP, Chief Officer, People, Culture and Technology at Oceana Gold Corporation. Very warm welcome, Graham.
Thank you, Esther.
It's a pleasure to have you with us. So Graham is a global experience, people and culture business leader with extensive experience working across Asia, Oceania, EMEA, North and South America, and his track record focuses transforming businesses, improving performance through people, leadership, culture, and aligning strategy with the overall organization objective. So welcome, Graham, once again. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
Thanks again.
Thank you. Joining Graham, we have Tanmaya Jain, founder, CEO, Amber by Infido, and Forbes 30 Under 30 Asia. Hi, Tanmaya.
Hi.
Good afternoon. How are you?
Good afternoon. Very good, very good.
Good. So nice to have you with us as well. Tanmaya is the founder CEO of AI startup Infido. He's a speaker in the field of mental fitness, and he's helping HR leaders of top 100 brands like Tata, Coca-Cola, Airtel, Lenovo, Samsung, and many, really finding the gaps in their culture and helping them being able to action them. So thank you so much, Tanmaya, and welcome to the session as well.
You're welcome.
And joining Tanmaya and Graham, we have Wendy Zia, Chief Human Resources Officer at DB Schenker. Warm welcome, Wendy.
Hi, everyone. Hello from Singapore.
Hello as well, and thank you so much for joining. And Wendy is an expertise in developing and leading effective and impactful people strategy that enables companies' growth and innovation. So thank you so much, Wendy, as well for joining. So the conversation today, we've prepared a set of questions when we were preparing for this session, and we have a list of things that we thought will be relevant for all of you. But of course, our time is yours today. So any question, any comment, any contribution, I'm going to be taking those from the comment section. And I can see many of you joining from Australia, Malaysia, we have India, and we have such a diversity, beautiful group here. So not only questions, as I go through the questions, I'll invite you as well to comment and bring your own answers. But also if you have questions, please feel free to bring them along as we go through the conversation. So let's get started, Graham, a little bit with a definition of employee experience. If you were to help us think about how does the definition of employee experience has changed when you look at the last 18 months, and what are some of those defining parameters that you think are more relevant in the post-pandemic world than before?
Yeah, thanks, Esther. Before I jump onto that, I was just rolling through the list of people who have joined and looking at the countries and cities: Dubai in the UAE, New Zealand, Malaysia, Indonesia, Philippines, Thailand, and the like. It's India. It's interesting, and my home country, Australia, just to see the breadth of people and having worked in all those countries. It's it's great to see that, and Singapore, that broad participation. So welcome everybody. Yeah, it's a really good question, and I think the real challenge that's occurred with COVID in terms of that employee experience has shaped, in my view, three really key parameters or lenses, as I call them, in terms of looking through. And I look at the lenses of the leader. I also look at the lens of systems and also of self as in the person. And I really think some of the key sort of paradigm shifts that are occurring is, from a leader point of view, there's really a greater emphasis on focusing on shaping culture and constructive behaviour. And I'll touch on that in a moment. And from a systems point of view, the recognition of how systems are driving behaviour. And when I talk about systems, whether they be procedures, new technology, or whatever it may be, but the influence on behaviour and culture and people's expectations. And then there's the person themselves. And what does that mean for them? And I think we place a lot of emphasis on the company, but I also think the individuals themselves are going through a bit of a redefinition in the workplace as well. So just very quickly, from a leader point of view, I think the aspect of trust and care is really starting to take fold, and affiliative behaviour, that's really coming through is what I'm seeing. The need to be a bit more flexible and take into account key principles of servant leadership. I think that's really becoming essential to engaging people. And then the other sort of final 2 points around the leader aspect is changing the way that they look at participative goal setting. It's not as easy anymore to walk down the corridor or ask somebody to come to your office. So this whole way you engage in participative goal setting is really challenging. How do we create a positive experience? And the final part is how does a leader become encouraging and humanistic in their approach? So I think there's a lot of soul searching going on across many areas, and employees are sort of seeking that greater levels of empathy and support and the like, especially with lockdowns and travesties and families and the like. From a systems point of view, just touching on that very, very quickly, I think if you think about all these things we have in our hands, our mobile phones, apps, and the like, we're so used to things being so fast, easy, and accessible. And when you're away from the office, you want that same experience. So, technology teams, including the one that reports to me, a struggle and challenge we have is how do we keep abreast of that? How do we make sure that we're enabling productivity better than before and ensuring that efficiency is there, so that the behaviour that the systems drive is one of an environment people want to be in. And then from the personal point of view about self, the key challenge, I think, which is an own employee experience, is the employee journey. And I think what I'm seeing is people are improving their IT savviness. They need to, because of communication and the need for that. They're becoming a lot more achievement orientated as well, because of this aspect of trust being placed on them by their manager. And the other key thing I'm really seeing is greater levels of consideration for others. I think we're all in our own bubble previously, but the old saying is we're all in it together, I think, is bringing people together. And as a result, self-actualizing aspect that people really strive for is coming out. Goal clarity, as they want to achieve, is becoming a lot more consistent. And the context of contributing to purpose, I really think employees are searching for something more than just a job now. They really identify that they want to be with a company who can relate to their contribution to society, or whatever it may be that's relevant to them. So three key paradigms really for me. Thanks, Esther.
Thank you so much, Graham. And I love the way that you've broken it down in these three areas, because I think most often than not, we focus a lot on the systems, and we think that the systems will just design and drive the behaviors and the change we want. And I love the fact that we normally do add the leader, but I think the fact that you've added the person, the individual himself or herself, as an owner of that experience is also super important. So thank you so much. So Wendy, Tanmaya, I'd love to add anything that you'd like to add to this definition of employee experience from your perspective. Especially Wendy, you're working on a large transformation project in your organization, and I think employee experience is at the core. So anything to add on that definition? Wendy, and then maybe Tanmaya, you can add as well.
Okay, I think Graham has given us a very holistic view on things. Maybe just one point to add that is in the last 1.5 years, what I see as well, it's leaders are also experience the whole pandemic situation as an employee. So and they actually have two fronts, right? One is fronting their employees, and the other they themselves as an employee. So there is this I would say a lot of changes will have to be internalized by the leader and be very acutely aware of how their behavior, how they react to certain situations will have then a direct impact on the employee experience of the teams that they are leading. So I would say that it is a very, it can be a very confusing state of things. So it takes constant, I would say, learning, unlearning to perfect this whole transition. And I believe this transition of having hybrid workforce, gig economy, and things like that are there to stay. So we may not have reached that perfect answer to things on how a future employee experience will look like, but there will definitely be many, many rounds of iterations before we hit that sweet spot. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Wendy. Tanmaya, anything to add?
Yes, yes. Thanks, Wendy. Thanks, Graham, for summarizing it so far. Just some context for everyone. Our research is limited to 5 regions. It's India, Singapore, Philippines, Malaysia, Indonesia, and Australia, New Zealand. So whatever I say is limited to this context at the moment. What I've noticed is a significant change in weightages, right, as opposed to addition of parameters. So, for example, number one, we've seen that earlier customer experience was getting the maximum weightage from a CEO at a very broad level. Now employee experience is getting the same attention. And the way they're defining it is they're saying that it's about delivering the outcomes your employees expect at every stage of the journey from the very first interview till the day they leave, right? So that's the broad level. Now, when you start going inside, certain cohorts are getting more weightage as opposed to equal weightage across employees. For example, we saw that 64% of new joiners who've joined post-pandemic, who've not seen anyone, they're getting higher weightage, higher attention. We're seeing Gen Z, 60% of Gen Z, so to say, are merely surviving. They're getting more attention. And the most sort of missed one is working parents, right? So working moms as one cohort was identified as 56% of the population that is struggling, right? So these 3 cohorts got higher weightage. And finally speaking, when it comes to the parameters that influence experience, right, there is usually the manager, there is the culture, and so on. Earlier recognition manager culture used to be very high, right? But now they're not as high as burnout, right? Or as remote onboarding or as social wellness, because there is no concept of serendipity and water cooler conversations anymore. So weightage is the biggest change I've seen over the last 18 months.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Tanmaya, for sharing that as well. And I'm going to pick up some of the answers from our community as well. And I think a lot of it connects to what the three of you were talking about. And I love Sandra's comment on the multiple parameters that she's bringing to the fore. And I think that's just the amalgamation of different areas. So she talks about hybrid work culture, tools, great UI, equal participation, visibility for everyone in equal participation of people who are in the office and at home, and making sure that that equity exists when you have a hybrid situation, fair distribution of jobs. So a lot of areas that need to come together and align to create that experience. So thank you, Sandra, for sharing that. And we have so many of your comments. So thank you so much, Satya, talking about it is not about the hardware, but it's really about the software. And I think here he refers to the mindset, the hybrid mindset, and how do we change that mindset to be able to work with people from that perspective. So thank you, Satya, for sharing that as well. Great. So I'm going to be taking on more comments as we go along.
Yes,
and I'm staying with you. Yeah, go ahead, Graham. Any comments?
Graham here. Yeah, just on Satya's point, it's a really good one. I'm doing some study in neuro leadership. And one of the biggest shifts I'm seeing, I work in the mining sector based in Brisbane at present, but one of the items I'm seeing is, that we talk about psychological safety, and I'm sure everybody on this call has read or understood a little bit about it. But as practitioners in the people and cultural human resources space, I don't think we understand how do we curate that and what does it mean. So there's an expectation out there, but really changing the mindsets as opposed to trying to put a practice in place. How do we really connect with leaders to change that mindset and get them employees to relabel things and a whole series of things? You know, that to me is at the forefront of where P&C will probably head into as we realise the outcomes of COVID and this hybrid workplace and the various needs for change. So I think that'll be one of the things on our horizon next to start paying attention to is how do we change the mindset and that aspect of neuro leadership really coming back into improved decision making and connections of employees and employee work experience, etc. Just thought I'd, given Sadia's comment, I thought I'd share that.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Graham, for bringing that as well. Great. So, Wendy, I'm going to be inviting you to think about how do we take all these elements and operationalize it in a way that, as you said, we keep improving. How do we reboot? How do we start looking at employee experience to really accelerate that journey of change that you were referring to?
I think one of the most important thing is to first understand the workforce demographics. When we talk about, in the past, when we talk about diversity and inclusivity, right, we are always thinking about gender, we are thinking about race and nationalities. However, I think there's an additional dimension with this whole situation now. It's the access to systems. So coming from logistics, where I do, in my company, we have the blue collars, the white collars, the direct labelers, the gig part-timers, and things like that, you know. The engagement has been taken to a different level. So, and we can't just assume that everyone can receive the same kind of information transparency just because we have a intranet, because only confirmed permanent employees will have access per se. So it takes now simple communications will take a lot of efforts. So how do we then definitely we have to tap on technology to help us to bridge this gap. But what kind of technology? It cannot be the same old traditional methods of an email, an EDM, or things like that. So communications, and what we see now is millennials want the information like now. I want a response like now. So how can technology move in that direction to help us? Chatbots, nice, but still not at that level of expectations. So yesterday I was attending a very interesting forum about employee benefits. And one of the key things that I took away was treating your employees like your customers. So that got me thinking, you know, when customers call the company, right, straight away we have someone picking up the call, answering all their queries in a very personalized and customized manner. So how do we achieve that same kind of customer satisfaction, delighting the customer, turning it into delighting our employees? So we are looking at, for Schenker at least, we are looking at working with the educational institutions in Singapore, tapping on the bright minds in school, the millennials, to come up with ideas on what, how can we be able to read all these employees' responses, experience, or whatever emotions they have real time, and be able to react to it real time. There's no point in waiting for half a year for the what do you call that, performance appraisal. So that's how I look at the whole situation currently.
Wonderful, thank you. Thanks, Wendy. And I can see Tony Flynn's comment saying it's reassuring to know that many organizations globally are still struggling with global changes and constant unknowns. So I think while you share the step-by-step and kind of an approach on how to solve it, but I think everyone in the community is empathizing with how challenging it is and how this is really a journey and not something that, you know, it's a project that we will complete, but it's probably something that we're going to be continue to do and improve. So you spoke about workforce demographics, you spoke about understanding the needs, you spoke about having that vision to say, in your case, it really is about thinking about employees like customers. and leveraging technology to provide that real-time, immediate service to our customers. And that's how you kind of break that big unknown, as Tony calls it. Anything to add? Tanmaya, Graham, would love to hear your viewpoints about how do you break this elephant down into smaller pieces.
Yeah, just I'll jump in first, Tanmay, if you don't mind. I guess one of the things that typically happens around your organisation design and your model, your work model, is typically when you see greater levels of uncertainty, organisations tend to centralise a little bit more, and that's the aspect of control as opposed to letting the reins run free. One of the things that I'm seeing across the board with the countries that we operate in is the same questions being raised back through our local people and culture managers and teams. And just to come back to this concept of benefits, it's the benefits that I'm seeing are being requested. And bear in mind, I work in the mining industry, so every industry may be a little bit different, but they're more around compassionate reasons and compassionate grounds. And it's not necessarily about money and the like. It's really about employees not intentionally, but I think inadvertently raising the request for greater levels of consideration and support in their own way. And that in itself is going to continue. So I agree with Wendy, it's going to continue to drive the hybrid workplace environment and the like. But on the inside, the issue is around structure and design and flexibility, and companies changing, decades in many cases of practice and belief and culture and things like that. So I'm not seeing a demand for more pay and things like that. I'm seeing a quiet demand for greater levels of just basic humanity.
Thank you. Thanks, Graham, for adding that. Tanmaya, anything to add before we go to some questions from the audience?
Sure thing. When you say you want to break something down, right, it just reminds me of a product. Excuse me. It reminds me of a product function. So what essentially we've been doing is we're trying to look at the people function like a product function, because I think everything's going to get commoditized when we look at benefits, right? Everyone will offer health insurance. Everyone will offer great perks. Everyone will offer all kinds of things as we progress. But it's similar to the product world. It's about how fast you ship a new policy, how fast you create the minimum viable, let's say, policy, or like Wendy said, what delights the fastest, right? And keep iterating, let's say, week on week, month on month, as opposed to once a year, we go ahead and just launch a policy and just wait the next year. So in fact, like something as simple as I was having a very hard conversation with my people team on why is it that our insurance is iteratable only once a year? What if you want to keep changing it every 3 months? Right? So these simplest of things will completely change as we progress into 2022.
Wonderful. I love that metaphor of just keep moving and keep shipping those features and those policies. So thank you so much for sharing that. And there is a question here on from Mei Chow, and we were talking about the role of the leaders, and I think I want to bring that in because we do struggle sometimes to coach or help leaders to internalize employee experience as one of their areas, one of their functions as well. So the question is how do we coach or help leaders internalize employee experience while continue to motivate their employees, their teams, without losing motivation and productivity? A lot of weight on the manager, on the people manager. So how do we help them?
Yeah, I can share the journey at Oceana Gold because May's question is really pertinent to what we are doing as part of our culture. We're spending a lot of. I'll go back a step. We reassessed what do we want out of our culture and what do we want to be known for in the mining sector. And I won't go into that what we did, but values were reestablished, our purpose was reestablished, our vision and the like. But really underpinning all of it was what do we want to be known for as leaders. And so we have done a lot of work with human synergistics in constructive behaviour and constructive leadership. And I think this is really pertinent to that positive employee experience, is getting the leaders to understand their role in contributing to a constructive work environment and recognising that you want employees engaged, not for fear or reacting defensively and the like to things. But the important part is actually measuring yourself. So we have done a world first and put together a culture measure that looks at 6 key parameters around effective leadership. I report on that to the board. It goes into our annual report as well, and it's an indicator around. It is a pulse check. We run it 2 times a year, but it's an indicator around what is happening in the way that we are working with our employees around 6 core behaviours that really are designed to improve performance, improve engagement, and get employees to identify if they are being led constructively by their leaders.
Thank you so much, Graham. Can you give us a hint on those 6? Just give us 1 or 2 or 3 of those parameters, just for us to kind of visualize what those core behaviors are.
Yeah, absolutely. So 2 of them are really obvious. 2 of them are up and down communication. So communication going up and communication coming down, and that's the interaction between the boss and the direct subordinate. The other is obviously around goal clarity. If you're not clear on your goals and what's expected, you get anxiety. You don't feel you're contributing in a whole series of things. So so that's another key one. But really, really basic things, but they are essential to you as an employee understanding your place in your team, in your workplace, etc. But also your self-worth and self-actualization.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thanks, Graham. There's a question from Shihu about what's the best way to calculate ROI for a calendar of activities. In this case, because the conversation is on employee experience, I'm going to take the opportunity to contextualize it on experience or engagement. And Tanmaya, I would love your viewpoint here, because I think when we're talking about an annual calendar, I don't know if that is aligned to what you were just mentioning about being able to roll out things as the need requires, and whether we can look at an annual calendar ROI anymore. And if we don't have an annual calendar ROI, then how do we plan for it? And what's the ROI of our work? I'm taking Shihu's question and changing it a little bit, because I'm not sure if we can have an annual calendar, but I'd love to hear your viewpoints on that.
Yeah, I think that's a very good question. I'll be able to answer it in the context of experience and not training. And
Correct.
what we've noticed is the best way to measure ROI is the percentage. And this was a huge debate, by the way, because we spent so much time proving ROI. So the best answer I got was the percentage of individuals who achieved their OKRs or KPIs in the last period, which could be last year or last quarter, and the percentage who achieved their OKRs or KPIs in the next year. Because if we're working on employee experience and it's not moving the needle, right, maybe it's not helping. That's one way. The other way is employer branding, because you need to pull in more talent. So is it influencing your Glassdoor ratings? Is it influencing the commitment towards culture, where some companies measure average revenue per employee? Can lesser people achieve more, right? So those are the, let's say, not so common ones. The common ones are, of course, the time saved by HR. The common ones are, let's say, attrition, retention. The common ones are, let's say, with regards to the experience going up, which means the ENPS, the Employee Net Promoter Score. Those are the common ones. But the unsaid ones are, is it really moving your performance needle? So that's how we've seen it. And on a quarter-to-quarter basis, ideally, and not an annual basis.
Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Wendy, anything to add on the measurability?
Yeah, I mean, I quite like what I hear, that attrition is not that main measurement, because that is the one thing that I don't really believe in, that traditional matrix. For me, whether it's training, whether it's employee engagement, I think there are many ways that we can look into it from a very creative manner. For example, for HR, you do tons of exit interviews. How did the person leave your company? I think there was a question in somewhere about employee experience. Is it important? Definitely. I think in Schenker, one thing that we are proud of is that we have a lot of employees who left and rejoined the company. Yeah. Why do I look at that as? That is I guess it has to mean that they enjoy the experience or what they had in their previous time with Schenker. So I would like to see more and more creative way in measuring employee experience, ROI on training. Is it really important to train people just for the job that they are doing, or we are actually looking at developing individuals to be more, I wouldn't say productive, because that word just gets many people tired and stressed out. So happier people, happier employees. Yeah, that's
Thank
for
you.
me.
Thank you so much, Wendy. And there is a follow up from Tulika. And I think, Graham, you mentioned that before when you were talking about burnout as a concern area. And Tulika's question is one of the major concerns about this hybrid working from home mode is the burnout and the difficulty of really separating personal and professional, and really helping people put boundaries so they can take care of their health, their rest, and so on and so forth. So what are your thoughts? And I think, Wendy, you also mentioned that about happy people is also about healthy people and people who are rested, because I think we all have that concern. So any comments for Tulika about how do we overcome that challenge? She's specifically talking about some segments like female employees, but I think it would be great if we can maybe look at it in a broader sense. How do
It's
we look
a,
at burnout?
yeah, look, it's a great connecting question from the one that was just asked about an ROI, because if I look at ROI first before this issue of burnout, I think the context of ROI should be measured around you achieving your business goals as opposed to a program. And uh, to me, that's the important thing as to what the business wants to achieve, not
Yep.
necessarily a program. So if you're achieving your set goals, don't worry about your programs. Obviously, something's working, and spend your effort on focusing on those goals that you want to deliver. But the issue of burnout, and it's real. It's real for executives too. I can assure you. I went through a stage early this year where I was not sleeping and working 70 to 90 hours a week and a whole series of things. So I'm human as well, despite the additional responsibilities. And one of the things I started to look at was, again, we were taking more and more on as humans. And really, what is an effective level of you can manage? The number of tasks that you think about having on the go at any one time, but you're actively spending time on. And the reality is, it's not about having a hit list or an action list of hundreds of items or 60, 70. It's really around a core number, and that core number is about 7. So if you're a leader and you're thinking about your team and what's on the list of actions and things to do, really ask, what are the number of actions? Also thinking about your spans of control and what's happening with the team and the size of the team and the like underneath. But the other thing is just making sure that goal clarity and goal certainty exists, and be there as a coach. Tell your people and team enough. I do it. I have a REM manager who would work 24 hours a day if she could stay awake that long, and I have to actually tell her, enough. Come on, that's enough. We're hanging up, and we're going home. So as leaders, doing the right thing and calling a stop to it, be proud to do that. It's not shameful.
Yeah, thank you, Graham. And as I'm hearing you, I'm reminded of a conversation somebody was sharing with me about the role is really, if your employees are athletes, then our role as managers is to really be that coach to say, well, tomorrow you're resting because your muscles need to recover. And you listen, if you're an athlete, you listen to your coach and you do as he or she says. But when we tell our employees to take rest or to, I think there is that level of FOMO, no? That, am I missing out? Is it something going on? Am I contributing enough? And I think I love what you mentioned about being strict as a good athlete coach to say, well, you're resting tomorrow, you need to recover.
Yeah, 20% of your energy is used through your brain. So the more you're applying it, the more power you're burning. Take a break.
Thank you so much, Graham, for sharing that. Wendy and Maya, anything to add? I'm going to the next question. There are lots of questions coming. So should I go ahead?
I'd love to pitch in with a line here.
Okay,
that,
go ahead, Tanmaya.
I've noticed that we presume that the person who's burning out, their manager, he or she is not burning out. Whereas we're in a time where both parties are burnt out, right? And I know that as a startup CEO myself, I've gone through burnout myself over the last couple of years. So I think what we observed is that at the end of the day, you need a third party, a system, right? To tell you that, hey, you're walking in the wrong direction, and what you're assuming to be flow state will actually result in burnout, right? So for example, a system needs to sort of scan your calendar and identify that, are you overclocking regularly? Are you constantly in meetings and not finding time for yourself? Are you working weekends? Are other people blocking your time without your permission, right? So all of those nudges have to be there. And there's a book written on the nudge theory as well. Frankly speaking, I haven't seen a single product in the world, including ours at the moment, which does this. But I see the world evolving in this direction where if both the manager and the employee are struggling, right, a system has to tell them, like, you know what, change something. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And maybe
technology to the rescue. Yes, Wendy.
Yeah, and maybe if I can add, I think the point that Graham made about taking rest the next day and be very strict about it is about leading by example as well. So myself being a manager, and I was close to a burnout, so I find it very, because I wanted to be there for the team, especially during a difficult period. I felt that they needed the moral support. But as the time moved on, I realized that my presence being there was of getting lesser and lesser value because I was not being 100% of myself. Yeah. So I keep telling my team members to take rest. However, they don't take it very seriously because I myself was not following my own instructions. So the very first thing leaders have to recognize is that, you have to lead by example. And to Tamaya's comment on the nudges and things like that, and very interestingly, I come from an engineering background, right? So I like to read a lot and facts, figures. It has to be backed by data before I get bogged into it. So recently I came across this new startup that was trying to measure burnout in employees. And it was a very, I would say, something new in the market, whereby employees can actually, through a survey, kind of identify which are you nearing the burnout level. It's not something that I'm totally endorsing now, but I am very open to explore what the different kinds of solutions in the market. Checking the calendar by a virtual assistant might be a good idea on, are you having too many virtual sessions?
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, Wendy. And I'm going to come to Tanmaya now on this technology and hearing and being able to really understand what's happening on the ground level. But thank you, Wendy, for sharing your personal story. I think it's so important to reflect about each one of us as leaders. Are we walking the talk? Because I think people at the end of the day will just see what you do and not what you say. So if you're inviting people to take rest and not be online and not work weekends, then we need to really see our own behavior and really limit ourselves to send those Saturday emails or those Sunday evening emails to plan for the rest of the week. So thank you so much for sharing your personal story. So Tanmaya, inviting you in, and Wendy was talking about how technology can help us and some of the tools to allow us to assess what's the burnout level. But I think it's not just burnout. Overall, what is the sense and what's happening, what the employee is talking about feeling, and what has been because of course you have access to so much of data working with organizations across the region. So number one, what do you hear people saying, and what are they concerned about? What are the top priorities or top concerns? And how can we use technology to continuously listen and to continuously act on what we listen?
Got it. No, you've asked my favorite question. This is my bread and butter. But I think what I've noticed is up until 2019, which is pre-pandemic, there was a conversation around moving from annual initiative surveys to sort of something real time. And now it's become hygiene. So if anyone's asking that question, they're already late. And the problem you mentioned is the problem our customers mention, which is right on top of their mind, is this whole concept of great resignation, which is floating around. Forbes and Microsoft wrote about it, where there's a prediction that 41% of the global workforce will quit within this year, right? And I'm frankly speaking, seeing that all around. Every single friend of mine has quit their jobs. And I'm like, hey, what's going on? Right? And the reasons are so obvious, right? Some of them are burning out. Some of them, like Graham said, are soul searching in their lives and so on, right? But this is the number one problem in everyone's minds. It's a great time for an HR tech company, right? But it's a very, very hard time for an HR person. So that's the first thing, right? The second thing is we're in a heavily candidate / employee driven market, right? So everything is being driven by candidates. Like they're just leading everything, and their expectations are not stagnant. So if we come up with a strategy that, okay, this quarter, this is what we'll do for our candidates, it expires within 2 months, right? So much that one startup in India is offering BMW bikes for joining, to engineers for joining.
It's crazy, isn't it?
It's unreal, right? So And what I've learned in the second bucket, this was from GE Healthcare CEO. She said the fundamental problem is none of this has to be on your clock, right? Which is the company's clock. It has to be on the employee's clock, right? And you have to look at the employee journey from their first interview till their first 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. Maybe the manager changes, project changes, location changes, remote work happens, wave 2 happens, wave 3 happens, right? And then they leave. And it's all on their clock as opposed to sending a quarterly thing to everybody, right? And where we're moving now is we're being so like aggressively nudged on how do you really solve for the actions, right? Because yes, you're measuring the experience, great, right? But how do you solve the action? Because people say survey fatigue is a problem, but the real problem is lack of action fatigue. Like employees are sick of like constantly being questioned without any action. And what I've observed is now they're expecting nudges, like we spoke about. Now they're expecting us to create a pool of articles from Harvard Business Review. They're expecting us to coach the managers because the time it takes from HR to managers is months, right? So you do your survey this quarter. By the time it reaches the manager and by the time they act, 10% of your employees would have left, right? So suddenly it's becoming our responsibility to help our customers with this because everyone's struggling with the actions. And what's frankly speaking a little alarming is the employees are not cooperating in our customers, right? So when I say they're not cooperating, uh, their uh, their tolerance for late responses is like they want everything now, right? They'll get a better opportunity somewhere. They want an answer from you now, right? If you forget their feedback, they'll start questioning you now. So, so there is so much pressure on the HR because we're used to a centralized HR culture where HR owns everything. But the only way we can solve this problem is by A, coaching managers, and B, helping them with nudges, helping them with a way to act on this feedback. So this is what I've seen, and I'm very passionate about this topic because I've seen so many people struggle with this. And for those of us who haven't started surveying, right, it's going to be really hard. So my recommendation is use any platform, right, or use anything. Just listen to your employees because their minds are changing every month and we have to keep up with it. And we are also struggling and trying very hard to keep up with the week on week, month on month changes in the market. Yeah.
Wonderful.
So
Thank you so
that's
much,
my answer.
Tanmaya.
Yeah.
And I love your comment about measuring on the employee's clock. I think that's such an interesting paradigm shift, no? Because normally we look at, what do we want to measure and how often we want to measure, but we really never think about how do we measure from the employee perspective, and those moments of truth are different for you and for me, and hence are we measuring at the different times basis on that. And I think your solution for this lack of action fatigue of giving those actions back to the manager and really just decentralize that information and that access and coaching them at the same time, I think that's probably the only sustainable solution that we have. So thank you for sharing that. So we have 3-4 minutes to go. Graham, I can see you wanting to say something. Go ahead.
Yeah, I have. I saw two questions pop up.
Yeah, go ahead.
I thought I'd just touch on them really quickly.
Yes.
One was around psychological safety, and a small tip I would give everybody on this call: if you haven't looked into it and you are not aware of it, investigate the mood elevator. And really at the heart of it, it's about being grateful. So that's a really, really simple tip. If you can get managers to practice the mood elevator, if you're a dopamine junkie like me, where you want to feel happy and contribute and recognised and the like, you'll really have a good experience with people, and you can call out behaviour which is not appropriate. Simple thing: if I yelled at you, how would your mood be? As opposed to saying, "Great job, love your effort." Just think about how that short experience would be if I said that to you right now. So, the mood elevator. Mustafa asked a question just around the gap between leaders and employees' perceptions on employee exchange. I don't know about you, Mustafa, but I'm a father and a husband, and I think there's a gap just in those relationships on their own. So certainly in the workplace, they're going to be there. Really, the practice is how do you cultivate an environment where your team feel feel they can come and talk to you, and that's a challenge in some cases, especially when you're dealing with egos and the like. So if you think about getting the mood elevator into your business, I think it's a really cool way of helping bridge that gap in perceptions, because it'll foster conversation.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And my final question to the three of you as we close this conversation today is going to be a little bit of your word of advice for all of us who are in this call, reflecting about rebooting and accelerating that employee experience. What will be one thing you'll invite us to start doing, one thing you'll invite us to stop doing? And it'd be lovely to have a round robin from the three of you. One thing to start, one thing to stop, as we want to accelerate our design of employee experience that leads to higher productivity and higher innovation and higher engagement. Who would like to start? And this was an unplanned question, by the way. So go ahead, Graham.
I'll take it first. The others need a bit of time. I think that the first thing to start doing in the people and culture backyard is have a good look at your technology which fosters communication and knowledge sharing. I think that's critical. And the one thing to stop doing is to take too much on yourself. Be human, recognise you're a human as well. A lot of talk about HR, it's their spotlight. I can tell you it's also our grave if we're not careful. So don't assume this is your problem, but foster conversations with your peers to be part of the solution.
Thank you.
Maybe
Tanmaya.
I can go next.
Wendy? Okay, Tanmaya, go ahead.
So the stop is for employees and HR both. So the stop is for employees to stop normalizing the fact that a Monday morning has to be so bad, or it's a struggle to wake up on a normal working day. And for the HR, it's to stop repeating and relying so much on people and automating everything. And what that segues into my start is to expect more from your technology, because there is so much out there, right? Whatever ideas, whatever vision you have, right, it is all possible, right? Like for me, the vision is, what if you just type in on Slack or on Microsoft Teams, whatever you use, that, okay, / Esther, I want to know what's up with Esther. I get her performance, I get her engagement, I get my action points with her. I know everything I need to do. And I don't have to log into anything. I don't have to do anything. And that's my idea, right? But you will have 10,000 more ideas. So expect more from your partners, expect more from your technology, and expect more from HR. That's what I will expect. So yeah.
Wonderful. So don't lower the bar, just raise
Yes.
it. Keep raising it. Awesome. Thank you so much. Wendy?
Okay, maybe I'll start with what to stop first. I
Yes.
think employees need to recognize that the leaders are experiencing the whole shift for the first time. So do not expect leaders to have the answers to everything and have the answers to everything, the correct answers to everything the first time. What we are shifting to is a more collaborative workspace. We need to have the feedback, proactive feedback, because I see a lot of comments coming in, about having the empathetic ear to listen, to have patience. Yes, at the same time, we shouldn't wait till issue has happened before you give the feedback. You can always be proactive and giving the feedback from time to time to help to shape the policies in the company that you are working in. I think what has come through very clear to the leaders is that we need to have a lot more personalization in terms of the experience and things like that. So I'm pretty sure most of us are ready to listen. So to get all the feedback in, be authentic, both sides, right? The employees, the management, the leaders, because together we need that collaborative spirit to create the experience that you want as an employee. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Wendy. And I think that summarizes this conversation so well, because at the end of the day, it's all a collaborative effort. And we started with Graham talking about leader, system, and individual, and you're talking about individuals and leaders, and we kind of start and we end almost with the same comment, that it's not just going to be one thing, but it's going to be our culture, our leadership, our systems, our technology, and our employees themselves taking ownership of that experience. So thank you very much for this wonderful conversation. Thank you, Wendy, Tanmaya, Graham, for being with us and sharing. It's almost been 50 minutes, and it does look like we've just been together for 10 minutes. Really, really thank you. Gratitude for your time today.
Thank you, Esther. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Thank you all.
Thanks for having me here.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And we're going to meet Wendy, Tanmaya, and Graham once again at the Employee Experience, People Matters Employee Experience APAC 2021. And remember, that's going to be on 9th of September, and we're going to be meeting them again with many other leaders who are going to be joining us from around the world. And we look forward welcoming you too as well. So remember, earmark 9th of September for the People Matters Employee Experience APAC 2021. So we'll see you back on your screen soon, and have a wonderful evening and stay safe.